Hello again, welcome back to the Vinyl Brotherhood. Today, we're going to review a new album by Bongo Chico, the solo project of Tim Foreman from Switchfoot. It's going to be a great time, so maybe get comfortable and we'll get started here momentarily. First things first, we're going to take a look at this album. Love the presentation. Tim Foreman actually designs most, if not all, of Switchfoot's album covers, most of them at least. And this one is no exception. Let's take a look at the actual vinyl. Beautiful white. Yeah, there's the label. I think it looks quite nice. So, you may remember we've covered a lot of Switchfoot on this channel in the past, and if you've kept up with us, then you know how much the band means to me on a personal level, so obviously a new solo project from one of its members would be of interest to me. I gave the album singles a listen as they were being released, but leading up to the full album, I had wondered how this would compare and contrast to the typical Switchfoot project. What would Tim Foreman do to set himself apart as a creative force in his own right? Is Bongo Chico's debut anything like a Switchfoot record? My answer to that is both yes and no. And I'll be doing everything in my power to treat Bongo Chico like its own thing and judge it by its own merits, because ultimately, that's what it is. And at the same time, as a longtime Switchfoot fan, I found this album to be somewhat revelatory. Tim has been co-writing Switchfoot songs with his brother, lead vocalist John Foreman, since the early years of the band's history. And after giving Bongo Chico a couple of listens, it gave me a better idea of what it is that Tim brings to the table. If you too are an avid listener of Switchfoot, then some of the melodies brought forth will make you feel right at home. However, one of the ways where Tim really deviates from what his band is doing is in the kind of song that he's bringing forth. And I'm not hearing like a ton of anthems on here. And well, there might be one exception, but the Bongo Chico record doesn't carry the same fervor or the earnestness that would otherwise be expected. It definitely has plenty to say though. We find Tim exploring strained relationships, his life's journey, and wanting to leave behind a worthy legacy and so on and so forth. And it's all surprisingly personal, you see. We get a little window into Tim's world, especially on some of the songs on the back half, such as Losing the War, Come Back, and the beautiful album closer, What Happens Now. After listening on and off for a couple of months, I've decided that these are my favorite songs on the record. I just love how candidly Tim presents himself on these cuts, but even beyond his heartfelt vocal performance, he finds some ways to elevate the arrangements as well. The songs are pretty solid on their own, but Tim and his band take every opportunity to add interest in the form of colorful retro guitar tones, ethereal vocal stacks, string sections, all in the interest of giving these songs an atmosphere of their own, a personality. And now, Tim is not shy about where he draws influence from, and the early moments of the opening number, Feels Like Losing Me, we're already picking up on some Beatles-esque psychedelia. In fact, the album features several subtle and not so subtle references to the Beatles, including but not limited to quoting their classic song, Yesterday. And beyond that, like a true Californian, Tim channels his inner Brian Wilson to give this project the classic, lush and warm West Coast feel, wave of vocal harmonies and all. 1960s and 70s experimentation come together with the crunch and the grit of 80s and 90s alternative to create something familiar but exciting and unique all at once. And with the added twist of Switchfoot style pop rock, Bongo Chico hits a striking balance between creativity, innovation, the artistic statement if you will, and accessibility. Just listen to those first couple of singles, When You Walked Away in 1995. Both songs are ultra melodic, punchy, and memorable, and in a proper society, I think these songs would be hit singles. So, it's just my opinion, but let's use 1995 as an example to further my case. This song really has it all. A dynamic range, a smart structure, an array of textures, and hooks that are intuitive yet well thought out. It's a perfectly realized pop song, and as an added bonus, there's a strong appeal to nostalgia, the secret weapon. I wasn't a teenager in 1995, nor was I in Southern California, so my experience of that decade was a little different, but this song painted so pure and vivid a picture that it was surprisingly easy to place myself in that precious memory. And much of that immersion is achieved because, like most records with a foreman attached to it, this album sounds amazing from a production standpoint. As someone who dabbles in the craft myself, I'm endlessly impressed at how much dimension and color these songs are given. The recordings are clean and capture immaculate performances, but at no point is the humanity, the human quality, no point is that lost, which is always a big plus. And this approach of production perfectly complements the authenticity of the lyrics as well, the genuineness. So for that, I'd like to give props to producer Nathan Camino, who Tim describes as the Sam Gamgee of Bongo Chico in the liner notes. Sorry if I butchered the surname, Nathan. Those magic touches are sometimes the element that puts a couple of these songs over the edge for me, and sometimes those embellishments feel like a tad much, so let me explain. Longtime fans are used to hearing Tim's voice nestled in the mix, harmonizing with the melody. Here, while he may be front and center this time around, he spends a good 90% of the runtime obscured by various reverbs and fuzz filters, and some may read that as a lack of confidence or a standing down of rough edges. I doubt that's the case, but I also can't say for sure. Regardless, while Tim may not be some vocal powerhouse, most of us aren't, he turns in a strong performance, perfectly suited to the album's vibe. Addressing other potential negatives, there's a small handful of songs in the middle section that I haven't really connected with quite as much for one reason or another. There may be at least one instance where the song felt like a Switchfoot B-side, or could very simply just not be as strong as the others. Still, even the non-highlights feature cool idiosyncrasies that would prevent me from skipping over them whenever I listen from beginning to end. So you could say that the strongest tracks bookend this album, but there are still some killer tunes along the way. Bottle gives us a vulnerable Tim grasping for hope and meaning beneath the weight of it all, as he says. It's a West Coast vibey mid-tempo jam that exemplifies everything that I appreciate about this album. I Don't Need You to Be Wrong also takes some amusing turns, cranking up the flanger on the guitars and droning on over a waltz time signature. And I'm getting a slight tongue-in-cheek read on this song, like it's played to be somewhat over-dramatic or over-exaggerated, think like Pinkerton-era Weezer, but it serves as a great commentary on setting aside your pride and choosing your battles. It's also the one song on the album to be written with his brother John Foreman, which causes me to believe that the title similarity with the Switchfoot tune is not a coincidence. So as you can see, I can't say enough about the band's creativity on this project. It's great stuff. So now let me share one last big plus about the Bongo Chico record. I just want to say that I appreciate Tim and Friends' restraint when it comes to the poppier elements of their sound. This album has a really broad appeal. Just about anyone could find something to enjoy on this record, but unlike some of later era Switchfoot, Bongo Chico never really draws from the well of current trends or whatever it is that the top 40 is doing these days. And that's just one more thing that makes it feel like this is a really personal project for Tim Foreman. And so, to summarize, the Bongo Chico record is a commendable effort for Tim and company. Passion, along with decades worth of experience, are the engine behind this well-crafted collection, one solid tune after another. And if you value melody, nostalgia, introspection, and vivid soundscapes, then I think you'll find plenty to enjoy here. It makes for a great, summertime listening experience, and I'm really sorry to only be discussing it now, well into the fall. So I have a little more to leave with you. As usual, we're going to take our album over to the living room and wrap things up. I said earlier in this video that I was going to review this album objectively and by its own merits. I'm still going to do that, but for those Switchfoot fans who think they could benefit from some kind of point of reference, I'm also going to give you an idea of where this falls in comparison. The truth is, Tim did a respectable job in making this his own thing. He captures a lot of that energy and the sunnier, saturated sound of the early Switchfoot records, which I love, But this is by no means Nothing Is Sound 2.0 or the spiritual successor to Vice Verses. It doesn't really have that kind of trademark earnestness or the larger-than-life scope that the band's most well-known works feature. It's a totally different experience with different goals, and even in the album's more heartfelt and introspective moments, Bongo Chico still comes across as pretty light. So at the end of the day, both projects are only comparable in that they share a songwriter drawing from the same bag of tricks using the same techniques. And you'll likely catch those switchfoot melodies in there at times, maybe a turn of phrase that seems somewhat familiar. So basically, you'll feel right at home, but instead of sitting in the living room, you're out on the newly installed deck in the backyard. I hope that helps. Now, pretending that I've never heard of Switchfoot and just totally removing my bias, I think I could score Bongo Chico an 8 out of 10. It's very well made, and it's proven to be a fun album to go back to for me. On a fundamental level, I don't get the impression that Tim is trying to create his own Sgt. Pepper here. It's a humble outing, and yet, undeniably, there's a lot of love and heart poured into Bongo Chico. As I was telling producer Ian earlier, chances are I've listened to works this year that are stronger on a technical level or perhaps more original, but months have passed and Bongo Chico is still the album that I've been going back to. Why is that? Well, it's comfort food, but not merely. There's plenty of substance to be found here. Each minute is packed with fun moments, and from beginning to end, you've got hooks, and it's highly immersive. And Tim makes for a great protagonist as he shares his joys, his fears, his memories, and his hope with us. And I'd like to give Bongo Chico my ringing endorsement today. And if you're interested in a little sample before committing, I recommend those first 2 singles, the songs that drew me in as well, When You Walked Away, and 1995. So I'll just leave it at that. Thanks for joining us for our review today, everyone. Whether you're new here or whether you're a longtime viewer rejoining us after our hiatus, we appreciate your time. So if you enjoyed this review, do us a big favor and hit the like button, or even better, share a nice comment with us. What have you been listening to lately? Possibly some Bongo Chico. What did you think? We've been gone for a bit, and there are a couple of albums that we'd like to catch up on, so you can expect some more from us very soon. But until then, have a good one. See you next time right here at the Vinyl Brotherhood.